Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Henry. Welcome back to My Europe. My Europe is a digital event series that is a collaboration of several Europe Directs. And these partners, every fourth Wednesday of the month, we welcome guests from different countries who give us great insights into their respective countries and work in their own focus, a topic close to the heart. As always, this is an interactive event. There will be the opportunity to ask questions. To do so, you can use the Zoom function at the bottom of your screen. I will then pick up the questions and pass it on to our guest. So much technicality in advance. Today, we are talking about Moldova, and we are really happy to welcome Anastasia Pociumban. Yeah, Marina is a research fellow and project manager of the German Council on Foreign Relations. She studied European interdisciplinary studies at the College of Europe and Philosophy and Communication at the University of the Academy of Science in Moldova. Her work focuses on EU enlargement and the EU's relations with its eastern neighbors, as well as the foreign policy of the countries of the Eastern Partnership. Yeah, you see, we have quite an expert on today's topic with us. Anastasia, thank you for being here. The stage is yours and you can start to share your presentation. And I will
Thank you, Henry. Thanks for sharing the screen. So hi everyone, my name is Anastasia, as Henry kindly introduced me already. I'm based in Berlin, but at the moment I'm actually in Chisinau in Moldova. So I'm glad to be speaking about Moldova from Moldova. I called also my presentation the #1 of beaten path destination in Europe because that's what Lonely Planet said about Moldova. So I hope there'll be more interest maybe after this presentation, but at the same time, I'm not a tourist guide, I'm a researcher, so I'm also going to speak more about the overall situation of the country a little bit, also with some maybe like culture interesting aspects, but also maybe the difficulties or the bottlenecks that are there. And so I'll kind of do the introduction and then some key facts about Moldova, also a bit about Moldova-EU relations, a little bit about like what Moldova is known for, and there'll be always space to ask questions. But first, before I proceed, we will have a quiz, but I wanted to ask if any of you there already maybe has some questions, or you maybe already like thought about some stereotypes about Moldova that you want to check whether it's true or not, or maybe there is something of particular interest, because I could speak about many things in 1 hour, but I think I'd like to also cater to your interest and your needs. So if you have now a question, please feel free to write it in the chat. Otherwise, just write it when you get it and I'll happily answer it. And now we will proceed to a little quiz. So I'll kindly ask you to vote for the questions I've prepared, to see also how much maybe you already know about Moldova or don't know, and also a bit to set the expectations, what we can discuss later. So if we could start the quiz.
Oh yeah, perfect, it works.
So the first question is how many people you think live in Moldova? So feel free to vote. Guess I see 4 people voted, 6.
Oh, we have quite a favorite here.
Yeah, I think that's okay. Yeah, so you're right, like most people are right. So indeed 2.6 million people live in Moldova, according to the latest statistics at least. So that's correct. But also to mention, in the beginning of its independence in 91, there were 4.5 million. So Moldova also has a very high rate of immigration from the country. Okay, next question. I think it's, yeah. So how many countries is Moldova bordering? I think that should be maybe easy. Oh, but I see that people are not so, there are different answers. That is interesting and also good. So Moldova is actually bordering only two countries, Ukraine and Romania. But I appreciate people who think it's four countries. Would also, people from Moldova would also like to have this option. But at the moment, it looks that's not the case. Next question. So Moldova has 1 kilometer of Black Sea access. Is it true or false? You even have a little map there.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to measure it, but that's a close one.
Yeah, so it's actually false. Even though you can see on the map, it's very close. Unfortunately, Moldova is a landlocked country. So Moldova has no access to the Black Sea, only via a port on the river, but it's not, I mean, the river, the Dniester River is going in the sea, but there's no direct access to the Black Sea. But you see how close is it. Next. So Moldova is an EU candidate country, an EU potential candidate country. Moldova has opened accession talks with the European Union, and Moldova is not an EU candidate country and doesn't have much to do with the EU. So it's most people answered correctly that Moldova is an EU. No, actually, no. Moldova is an EU candidate country. So Moldova got its candidate status last year. So following the start of the full-scale invasion of Russia in Ukraine, Ukraine applied for the EU candidacy, and so did Moldova. And in June last year, Moldova became a candidate country. And now we are expecting also the enlargement reports from the EU Commission on the 8th of November. So everyone is waiting for that, where there might be a recommendation to also open the accession talks for Ukraine and also for Moldova. So, I mean, the Moldovan, it's a very new thing. Before Moldova was an association member, but now it's a year and a half, it's a candidate country. Next. So this, I was surprised myself, like last year. So Moldova has been independent for like around for 32 years. And since then, how many governments do you think we had? 10, 12, 18, or 21? So you will be surprised, but we had 21 governments in 32 years. So it's been a lot. I think there was a year, if I remember right, it was 2019. There were 3 governments. One lasted for 3 months. We also had one time 3 years without a president because the parties couldn't agree to vote a president. So you can see there is a lot of change. Next. So Transnistria is a part of Moldova, and what do you think is it? Is it an autonomous region of Moldova, a self-proclaimed and recognized republic in Moldova, a self-proclaimed republic recognized by Russia, or a region within Moldova with the same rights as other regions? So here it seems more or less the votes are splitting equally. So Transnistria is a self-proclaimed unrecognized republic. Even though there are Russian troops there and there are strong ties with Kremlin, it is not recognized by Russia. There was I'll also speak a bit about it later. There was a war also in 92, and since then Transnistria proclaimed its independence. But as I mentioned, the independence is not recognized by any other state, except like other unrecognized state, like Abkhazia recognizes it, South Ossetia, and Nagorno-Karabakh was also recognizing Transnistria. They were recognizing each other. Next. And Gagauzia, another region in Moldova. It's an autonomous region in Moldova, self-proclaimed and unrecognized republic, a self-proclaimed republic recognized by Russia, or a region within Moldova, just as other regions, I mean. So, okay, so it's like many people answered, it is an autonomous region of Moldova. Gagauzia, also people in Gagauzia speak they speak Russian and some Romanian, but there is also a Gagauz language, which is a Turkic language. However, they are Orthodox. So this is important to know about them. They also have their own food and some wine that they make that is different. Next. So Moldova has the largest wine cellar in the world. Is it true or false, you think? It's also a small country, you've seen. Okay, it is true. It's Miliaș Mici. They have also like you have to. I have to admit I have not been there yet because Moldova has a lot of wineries and it's a bigger one. And when you go there, you should also go you go inside with a car. And there are also huge collections, like a lot of I don't know, the Queen of Great Britain, when she was alive, she also had a collection there. Before, I know Putin also had a wine collection there. I'm not sure what happened to that now, but basically, to go around, you really have to go by car in the cellars to visit it, and it's in the Guinness Record Book. Next. So Moldova has more than 50 wineries, more than 100 wineries, more than 200 wineries, or more than 300 wineries. Okay, so Moldova has more than 300 wineries. I actually have heard that the wine tasting in August that it's more than 200, but today I also checked that it's more than 300 wineries. So it's a lot to visit. I have not visited all of them, not even 1/10. I think it will be quite a challenge. But maybe one day also if you come to visit, that's something to do in Moldova. And next. So here there should be also a fourth option. But so Moldova is known for wine, walnut export, or the song from Ozon, the Smayahu, Mayaha. So here there was also a fourth version, all of the above, but actually this is what Moldova is known. And I think if the wine and the song, I mean, you maybe have heard about the walnut export, it's also something that makes Moldova, I mean, it's known about Moldova, but it's not what people know. And also in Berlin, sometimes when you buy nuts, at least I have seen it from, I think your company or like Rossmann also, they have walnuts from Moldova. So this is also something I personally was also not aware until a few years ago. And I think that's it, actually. This was the last question. Thank you very much for answering. I think that also provided a bit of overview of different topics we're going to discuss. And I'll just continue. So yes, as I mentioned, here is the map of Moldova. Moldova has 2.6 million people. Currently, Moldova is hosting. Sorry, I just cannot stop the poll. Currently, Moldova is hosting around more than 100,000 refugees from Ukraine. So for Moldova, the overall the start of the war, full-scale Russia's war in Ukraine was very impactful because, as you can see also on the map, Moldova is very close to. I mean, Moldova borders with Ukraine, but it's also very close to Mykolaiv and Kherson, and also when they were people also in the south, they can hear when there are attacks in Odessa. And I mean, sometimes there are also missiles or some rockets falling on the territory of Moldova. There has been a couple of cases. Normally, sometimes it's debris, and there was not. There also was one explosion. There were no victims, and it was more, not so to say, by accident, but so it also is felt a lot on the border, but also in the country, especially when the full-scale war has started. There was also a concern that Moldova is going to be impacted and the Russians can get there because of Transnistria. Transnistria is at the border with Ukraine, and there is a Russian army being stationed there. How to say, it's officially a Russian army, but it's also people who have Russian passports, but they're actually from Transnistria. So the risk was very the danger also in the sense of security, everything got on a high alert. Moldova has been since in the emergency state. So before the full-scale war, Moldova was also in the emergency state because of energy. So Moldova has been fully dependent on Russian gas. And already since 2021, Russia started delivering less gas, and now Moldova only gets 50% of gas from Russia. They just stopped delivering double 50, even more, it's even less than 50. Therefore, all of this came together, the refugees, the energy crisis, and I mean, back then there was also the COVID crisis, so the situation was very, very difficult. I mean, it's now being managed better, but you also have to understand that now people who came, it's 4% of the population, which is a lot for a small country as Moldova. So we also, people in Moldova also divided time before and after the start of the full-scale war. Also the border where with Transnistria was closed from Ukrainian side because of the risks related to this, but so far the situation has been calmed, and the Moldovan government and the Transnistrian authorities have been engaging in a dialogue not to escalate the situation. But the point is that there's been since the last 1 year and a half, there is an emergency state, and the situation is also more fragile, so to say, not so to say, but it is fragile. And also there was an energy crisis. So since Moldova doesn't have there was fully dependent on Russian gas, and also electricity is produced in Transnistria from the Russian gas and then sold to the right bank, to Chisinau. So this is something I think that is now to keep in mind. Also, I mean, to come to Moldova, it's very safe. You also can visit Transnistria. I just went there with friends in August from different countries, including from Germany. But it's a precarious situation. I wanted to also say the capital of Moldova is pronounced Chisinau, because sometimes people say Chisinau. So the correct name is Chisinau. And also the country is called Moldova. I know sometimes in German it's Moldavian. It comes from the Sovjetische Sozialistische Republik Moldavian, but they're people prefer, or the correct name is Moldova. And the official language in Moldova is Romanian, but people in Moldova also speak Russian, Ukrainian, and Gagauz. I have to say, now with Russian, it's a little bit tricky. I mean, also some people from Ukraine who come, they speak Russian, but more and more people speak Romanian also. So these are some key facts. Again, as I said, if you have a question, you can write about it. And then I will walk you a little bit through the Moldovan history, which is not very long. I mean, depending how far you go, but I'll be talking about in Moldova since independence. So Moldova became independent with the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, and then straight went into a war with Transnistria. So basically, why it happened, I mean, it's all very simplified, what I'm telling you in a short time, but when Moldova already in 1989, Moldova proclaimed the Latin script, Latin language instead of the Cyrillic, and there was also strong ties with Romania. And from the Transnistrian side, the Transnistrian wanted to preserve the Transnistrian Soviet Socialist Republic as part of the Moldovan Socialist Republic, and they were against unification with Romania, which was discussed, and I mean, that never happened. But basically, there was a war in 92, and since then, Transnistria proclaimed independence, and it's not being recognized with Moldova. I mean, this is a topic by itself that I could do a presentation about relations with Transnistria, but it's not, I find it also, there are different conflicts in the post-Soviet space, and it's very, I think it's also wrong to put them together, because it's also Soviet Union was a very big, large territory, and each conflict is different. But what's particular for Transnistria, I mean, in a way, there is a conflict, it's been protracted until last year, and now there is more discussion also what to do and how to further deal with this. But in a way, also people can freely travel. There is the diplomats from the university from Tiraspol, which is a so-called capital of Transnistria, is recognized, and many people also register their businesses in Chisinau, for instance, and they also benefit from the association agreement and free trade with the European Union. So, I mean, this is also quite interesting and important to understand. Then, okay, so the war was in 92. Then we had again, like, then Moldova, before 98, Moldova was, 96, Moldova was a presidential republic, and then it became a parliamentary republic, and then the Communist Party came to power. So it was people who were also in power during the Soviet times. They got a high number of votes, and then they came in power in 2001. And then since then there's been always like some demonstrations. In 2002, it was especially about the Russian language, and the communists proposed not to call Romanian language, but Moldovan language, and there was a lot of discussion about it. Then the Cossack Memorandum, what is this? There was a proposal about reintegration of Transnistria into Moldova, and it was also driven by Russia. And at the last minute, the Moldovan president back then refused to sign it. And that was one of kind of also a first maybe rupture with Russian, like stronger Russian ties, because they also, I think the person Kozak who did the memorandum, he was already boarding the plane and refused to come, or turned back the plane. At least this is what I remember and I've heard. Then in 2005, there was the first action plan with EU Moldova for cooperation. Then in 2006, we had Gazprom, Russian gas company, cut the supplies and also introduced an embargo for Russian wine. Suddenly after, I mean, there's been always a pattern. When there was some progress with the EU, there was a response from Gazprom. So then in 2009, Moldova had a very big demonstration against the Communist Party, and afterwards there was a more, like, so to say, European government coming, and then the relations with the EU started to develop on a faster pace, and at the same time, the relations with Russia started to decline. I mean, again, this is very simple to put it, because Russia introduced after Moldova, the same time when Moldova got a visa-free regime, Russia introduced an embargo on fruits and vegetables, and Russia was the main market for Moldovan fruit and vegetables. So then also, and before that, there was the wine embargo. But I have to say what's interesting again about the wine, that because of the wine embargo, I mean, believe me, in 2013, which is only 10 years ago, Moldova didn't have 300 wineries. I mean, there were wineries and people doing wine at home, but the wine in 10 years, wine industry and wine consumption really improved. Everyone in Moldova is like half a sommelier and can tell you a lot about wine. And people are really, I mean, like also the consumption of good wine improved a lot, and the production. So there is a lot of also experiments, and Moldova is hosting a wine festival every year for 2 days. It's always the first weekend of October, so I think that's always a good time to visit. It's very warm. I mean, also now it's too warm outside. It's, I think, 25 degrees or 20. But at the wine festival, it's for 2 days. It's like a national celebration of wine, and all the wineries also have something to offer. So so in a way, this Russian embargo also, so it was very difficult at the time, but it also helped the industry develop. But then, and at the same time, we were like, the government was there. They proclaimed to be European, but they also, one of the people in power was corrupt. So in the end, there was an unrest, and then we had other elections. So in 2016, we had Igor Dodon became a president. He's the head of the Socialist Party, and he is, I mean, again, if I put it very simple, he's pro-Russian, and he is also in favor with stronger relations with Russia. However, in 2020, Maya Sandu, who is also the current president, she won elections, and in 2021, her party won absolute majority in the parliament. So at the moment, we have a very, I could say, like, I mean, we have a very good government, which I think is very lucky, because if the war, full-scale war, would have started when Igor Dodon was in power, I mean, I don't know where Moldova would have been now. And the current government, but at the same time, the government came, and then there was COVID for 2 years, then there was an energy crisis, then we had the refugee crisis, then we had energy crisis again, and now we have this like security crisis since the last February. So it also has not been easy. And we have now upcoming elections in 2 weeks, in a week and a half, and the presidential elections next year. However, despite this, Moldova applied for EU candidate status following Ukraine, and they received it. And I mean, also the reform process is going quite fast. I mean, you also have only 2.6 million people in the country, so I think that makes it easier. But it's also, at the same time, we have a big amount of disinformation from Russia. There is a hybrid war going on in Moldova, and mostly the Russian messages were focused last year, or like Russian proxies, is that the government is trying to drag Moldova into the war and to have people mobilized. And of course, the usual message, Russian narrative, that this is a war between Russia and NATO. And then there is also disinformation about the current government, about the gas prices and the energy prices. So people also, especially like in some of the regions of Moldova, are more susceptible to disinformation, so it's easier to manipulate. So this is still, I mean, so it's kind of like, not to picture, there's no black and white, but it's also very, on the one hand, there is a lot of progress on some topics, but on the other hand, the security situation and the economic situation and energy situation is a bit fragile. But like also a lot of people, like before, I think a couple of years ago, it was 50% of people who supported EU membership. Last time I saw there was 68. So also the support for EU has been growing. And I mean, the export, even from Transnistria, they're exporting 60 or 70%, sorry, of the exports go to the European Union. And I mean, for Moldova, it's also most of it also with the trade is with the European Union. So this is a short, like, I think 7-minute history of the independent Moldova. And then a bit about the EU. So Moldova has a visa-free regime with the European Union since 2014. I think this, I don't know, you might know or not know, but many people in Moldova have a Romanian passport. How many, no one knows, because this data is not shared. Some say it's about half, some say more, some say less, but how does it work? Because before the Soviet Union, Moldova and Romania, they were one country. And so for many people, when it's up to the third generation. So when your grandparents were born in what was Romania back then, you can apply to receive back your citizenship. This is how it works. So this is why many people have Romanian passports from Moldova. When you meet one, I mean, it's very likely that that's the case, I have to say. On the EU candidate status, I already mentioned to you. And this year, on 1st of June, Moldova hosted the summit of the European Political Community. This is a new European Political Community. It's a new format that has been proposed since the start of the full-scale war in Ukraine, and it kind of to bring like-minded people, which includes EU members, candidate countries, but also UK is there. So, and this year it was hosted in Moldova. There were about 47 heads of states in Moldova, and this was the first time an event like this in the country. So it's also getting more visited by other people. But of course, it was also a lot of stress, I imagine, to organize this event, because Moldova doesn't have the capacity, or didn't have the capacity, to host such big events. Yeah, this is on the EU relations. That was a big, I mean, it's a big step for the small country. So everyone was, I would say, was celebrating this. And now we are waiting to see what happens next. But of course, with the EU, I mean, you know, it's always a slow process. So the expectations have to be managed. And I think also people are, think tanks, and also the government is also working to show the benefits, because by just becoming a candidate getting a candidate status doesn't give you immediate benefits. There are other benefits that come later when there is more financial support unlocked, but this also like it's a long process, and this also has to be communicated in a better way. I think like in Germany, you already, I mean, most people probably forgot how it happened, right? So maybe also EU is taking by granted, and in Moldova, that's not the case. There's a lot of discussions about EU, what does it mean? And at the same time, there is a lot of also then preconceptions or disinformation that comes with that question. Okay, and then as promised, I will tell you a bit about our more culture or things to do in Moldova. So Moldova is known for its wineries. Moldova has 4 wine regions. You can see a bit on the map. I mean, it's basically most of Moldova is just a wine region. In the north, there is more cognac produced, and center and south, it's more wine being produced. But Moldova is now complying with all these like denominations. I also wanted to show you some. So this is Purcar, red and white, and this is, I think, one of the, well, from the 360. This is also one of the most known. It's not the biggest. The biggest is Milește Mici and Cricova, but Purcar is considered one of the small, like, well-known also internationally wines. And I mean, this is also the wine that I usually buy because they sell it at the duty-free. And what's interesting, when Moldova received the wine embargo in 2014, together with, so Moldova produced this company, Purcar, they produced a wine which was from Moldovan autochthone grapes, Ukrainian autochthone grapes, and Georgian autochthone grapes, and it was called Freedom. It's called Freedom Blend. And now this wine is also, I mean, it has an Ukrainian flag, so it's a wine to stay in solidarity with Ukraine. And it's, yeah, it's made with the autochthone grapes, and it was also kind of like a response to Russia. Yeah, so I mean, there are almost 90,000 wine plantations. And I mean, I think it's also quite nice if you come to visit a winery. Often one can also stay there and sleep there. I also have a video, so I don't know, I can try to show you, but let's see if it works. A short video from the wine day. Let's see, and you have to give me a sign if it works.
We can hear the sound, but we can't see the video. Yeah.
So this is in the city center in Chisinau. Okay, I'll go back to, yeah, so I mean, I also see a question in the chat if there is a traditional dance in Moldova. Yeah, I mean, you can also hear the music. This is the sort of like national music. We have hora. It's a bit what people were dancing in a circle. There is also some other like sirba, it's called. And I mean, hora is the most known. And the dress or the shirt that people are wearing, it's called ie. It's I and ye, it's spelled. I can also spell it here. This is the national shirt. And the dance is called hora. And people also like for music, for this traditional music, we're using the traditional instruments, but one of them is called nai. I have no idea what is it in English, but it's basically, it's like a flute. So, and this is from how the music that you've heard, it is produced by it. Okay, next, I also wanted to show you some pictures of Moldovan food. So here is some of the Moldovan food. I have a funny story. This summer, 5 of my friends from Berlin, they came to visit me in Moldova, and we went to also the wedding of my brother. But I wanted to take them also to the bars that I like and to some other restaurants, like more fusion. But they just wanted to go and eat this Moldovan traditional food, which I mean, people eat a lot, also especially on celebrations. But I don't know, it's like everywhere. You don't eat in Germany schnitzel every day. So I also don't eat in Chisinau every day Moldovan food. But when they visited me, I think in a week, I ate the same amount as like, I don't know, I don't normally eat. But you see in the middle, this yellow pie. No, I don't know. It's mamaliga. It is like polenta, a bit similar, but it's harder. And the flour is a little bit, it's a thicker grind. But I mean, sometimes in Berlin, when I want to make it, I also buy polenta flour and it works. But it's just like it's a little bit different, but it's more or less, the idea is similar. Then we have sarmale. This is rice in cabbage or wine leaves. Then there is placenta. This is more on the presentation on the left in the corner. It's dough filled with cabbage or cottage cheese or salty cheese, a bit like feta, or also potatoes. And the sarmale on the right. Then there are pickles. Then there are a lot of like kind of stews from vegetables, like also mashed aubergines. I don't know, that's more like Ottoman influence. So Moldova was not part of the Ottoman Empire, but it was under Ottoman ruled by Greek Phanariots. So hence some influence, like I would say the cuisine is a bit of a mix with Ottoman, Balkan, but also Eastern European, because we also have polsunash, which is like vareniki, which is like dough filled in with something, small. Yes, I don't think they're in the picture, but like ravioli a bit. And then there is also zama, is a traditional soup. It's a bit like a chicken soup kind of. I mean, it's hard to explain when you try to do when you are not tasting this. But I think overall the mix, for instance, comparing to Romania, I would say the difference is that there are more vegetable dishes than, for example, in Romania. That's from my experience. And with Ukraine, it's similar, but depending on the region, closer to Moldova as well. There are similarities. Okay, so this is about the food.
Yeah, just one thing,
yeah.
back to the picture. We always talk about the food, but I could see these really cool plates. Is that a thing that every household has in Moldova?
Yeah, these are indeed the traditional plates. And you like, I don't know if every household has them. Many people have some of them. Like, for instance, cups in this way. We have at home. My mom has like pots to put in the oven from clay, and also some plates. And yeah, I think many people would have like some of them, at least a few. And my grandparents had more, for instance, especially for their cups. And also one can do workshops in pottery when, like now, I mean, like everywhere now, these things are becoming more hipster a bit to do clay workshops with like traditional pottery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And then, I mean, we already heard the Maya Hu song. Then another that I think is quite what people know from Moldova. Well, I can also play that. Okay, I think I know how to. So him, I think many people know. And then I wanted to go to this. Then you definitely this you definitely know. I believe everyone knows this. When they don't know about Moldova, I tell them about the song. And I don't know if you've seen, but the BVG, the Berlin Transport Company, now used the song from Ozon. The band is called Ozon, for their advertising for hiring people. So, I have seen when they launched it in the first 24 hours, it had 1 million views on YouTube. It's from last or 2 weeks ago, I think. And sometimes I have met people, they think sometimes the band is from Romania, but the band separated, unfortunately, already, like, I think, I guess, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, quite a while ago. And one of them is a successful producer, and another one is also still in music, but I don't know the third one, what is he doing? Okay, so I see the question, what is the song about? That we know it, but we don't know about the meaning. I mean, I don't want to disappoint you, but it's a love song. It's just, it's like the words say basically, this vrei să pleci, dar numai ei. It says like, you want to leave me, but you don't want to take me with you. Me and you and our love under linden trees. And the linden trees are reminding me of you. So basically, the song is about a guy being heartbroken and left by his lover, his beloved one. So it also, there are like versions everywhere around the world. I've also heard the version in Mandarin of the song, and people singing it in a school in China. I don't know, weird, but fine. At least it makes Moldova famous. And there is also this composer. I mean, he's quite renowned because for his waltz music. I'll just play the music. I mean, there is no video, but again, I don't know. so he is very well known also, I mean, in Moldova, but I mean, overall, he wrote movies and also internationally. He wrote a lot of like waltz music, and I mean, at least like I realized that he's known all over the world, kind of, but of course depends on people who are into classical music. I mean, this is very, basic. Like I could, of course, there is more more than this, and I mean, also Moldova participates at Eurovision, but they never won. And this the Epic Sex guy, he became famous after Eurovision. We also have a band called Dobsh's Dub, and they also participated at Eurovision and became like, I mean, they're quite well known. Also, I think in Europe, and it's more. I mean, in Moldova, there's also this music more like a bit like ethno folk style. So there are a lot. I think like in summer there are a lot of festivals. So when you come between, I don't know, like April and November, every weekend there is something. I was in August for 3 weeks, and there were 2 festivals just around Chisinau. There was a wine festival in Chisinau. So there's always something going on. There is I think that's also the trend in many or in more countries, but the folk music is being revived and modernized. The same with food. There are also now fusion food restaurants. So to kind of make this culture more popular in a way. I also wanted to talk about like some key issues that are facing, but I mean, I don't know if you have some questions more about these things that I spoke about. Okay, then I move forward. So I mean, I'm kind of like also coming closer to the end. So I wanted to leave some time in case someone wants to ask anything. But I mean, these are the key issues that Moldova is dealing with. It's, I mean, the economic situation, energy security, security in the regions, of course, the immigration from the country, hybrid warfare, and I mean, the upcoming elections and the potential to sort of jeopardize the elections. And also there is like, we have a party that was declared unconstitutional. It's a party of a person called Ilan Shor. He's an oligarch, and he's kind of in Israel. He's currently in Israel because he has an Israeli passport, and Israel doesn't extradite him to Moldova. And he's under investigation, and he's under sanctions from the European Union and the US. And some people from his party, so his party called Shor, was dismantled, and then 3 other parties starting with the same letters were created, So I mean, and now they're also running for local elections that are in 2 years. So in a way, it's like, you have a lot of progress on some topics with the European integration and so on. And but at the same time, the situation is fragile. And I think also because of the war as well, like as long as the war is going on in Ukraine, it's hard to say Moldova can be in a stable situation, because also in the beginning, last February, there was a very real risk that Russia can come closer, and Moldova has no real army. I mean, Moldova has a very weak army. It's like, I think 6,000 people. Since last year, Moldova has been investing in security a lot and in defense. I mean, there was no other choice also. And this has become high on the priority. Another thing that happened after the war was that, after the start of the full-scale war, and because of the energy crisis, the inflation in Germany was also high, but in Moldova it was 34%. So suddenly everything is 34% more expensive, and not the salaries are higher. So this had a big toll on the population. And now it dropped, and I mean, by next year it should drop to below 2 digits. This is the forecast. So there are, I mean, these are I think are the main challenges. On the other hand, there is a stronger message of and there is a stronger will of this more pro-EU orientation, and also the reforms are happening quite like at quite a high pace. I mean, it's not easy. One just don't do reforms very quickly. But for example, some interesting fact or like some things that I think Moldova did this leap jump is digitalization, internet, all of this. It's been like much faster, much easier to access, much cheaper. So like, and now there are more proposals to also digitalize all the documents, like all ID, driving license. It has already been voted in the parliament, because before we still had the Soviet system where you need to put a stamp on everything and nothing is valid without a stamp. And now the government is getting rid of this. So everything is becoming more digital. And I mean, there is a lot of potential to develop that at a quick pace. For instance, the challenges at the current moment with the reforms and EU integration, or where the reform is not happening so fast, is the judiciary, because of the, like, there is a vetting system that is put in place. It's more, I don't know how many of you are into also judiciary, but like there are also internal challenges to it. There is the staff challenges. But the process is also moving forward. So I don't know, this is kind of what I wanted to tell you about. And maybe if you've got some questions, so please write them. Otherwise, I think this is a small presentation. And also, if you have any other aspect of the country that interests you, I mean, as well, you can tell me or ask me.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was really captivating. Maybe I start to give the audience a chance to write their questions into the tool. And I had a question about I think it was I made a quick thing in my in my calculator, and there is I think a government per year rate 0.65, so 21 governments in 32 years. But right now, the Maya Sandu government has been there for 3 years in such a unstable time, such a stable government. Do you think that's a new thing, or a new thing that we could see in the future of Moldova?
Actually, there was a change of government this year,
Oh.
but it was still, I mean, it was the same, like it's also a government from the same party, but before we had Natalia Gavrilița. She was a prime minister until this February. It was, I think, announced, it was like 6th of February. And the issue was the government was changed, but it was a planned change within the party, because after 1 year and a half, I mean, dealing with first like 2 years of COVID, and then or 1 year and a half of COVID, and then also the war for almost a year. It was kind of like also the government was overstretched, but at the same time, I mean, I believe also the rating of the prime minister was lower as well. And at the same time, she was more like, she's more an economist, I mean, which is also important, but the current prime minister, he's a security person. So this was also because last year, in the beginning of this year, when you looked at the polls, and I mean, also security was one of the main concerns for the people, and there were no security mechanisms in the, like no instruments, or very few. So this is why the government changed even now. And then there were a few times where like the government only stayed for a few months. That happened a couple of times. That happened a lot. The government was elected, and then there was a non-confidence vote.
Yeah.
I hope this can. Sure.
And now we got some questions. I think Leandra was the first. She asked, is the population of Moldova rather young or old?
Actually, I think I checked before. But I have to be honest, I would have to check. I would say it's in the cities is rather young, but for instance, people in the villages, it's more older population. because I mean, a lot of people who are working force, they immigrated. The immigration trends stopped. Well, like not stopped, but they're not as high as they used to be. But I think I would have to actually check what is the average. What is, I think the majority is between 15 and 64, but this doesn't say so much, because the last census we had, that was, I mean, there is other information. The last census, official census, was in 2014. It doesn't include Transnistria, because they didn't accept to have the census there. So, but I think I can tell you in a second. Yeah, okay. So it's like 0 to 15, it's 19%. So but they calculate between like 16 and 56, you know, the working force. So this is the majority, it's 60%. But I don't know if it says so much.
Okay.
And
yeah, the next one, I think this we have a big theme with the next three questions, because yeah, someone asked, to which countries do most people emigrate? Are there main countries? The next one is asking about Erasmus and where people want to travel. So there's a common theme. Could you lean into that?
Sure. So people before, in the 90s, so that's when the immigration started, and that's from where the problem comes, is really the late 90s. After the collapse of Soviet Union, the turbulent times in Moldova, you know, the economy was like kind of shaken by this. In the beginning, when Moldova became independent, it didn't have a currency, and it also didn't have institutions in place, like proper institutions. So it took a while for things to be established. And people in the beginning, I think a lot of people also were immigrated to Russia for working. And then from the EU, it was Italy, Spain, Greece, Portugal, and Ireland. This was in the late 90s. Now it's also, I mean, I know there are a lot of people also in Germany, but you know, because like now many people also have Romanian passports, it's hard to really tell like where is the biggest diaspora. Italy is definitely very big, because people also speak it's very easy to learn Italian. It's very similar to Romanian. So Italy remains very big. Germany is really big. I mean, one can also see by the number of polling stations that are open during elections. So this is how we also estimate. Then also UK, people also going there. So now, I mean, since the last years, people are not going to Russia anymore. It's like stays in the EU countries. And it's less now as well, like before they used to go to Greece and Spain and Portugal. It's again less after the economic crisis. So then people redirected more to, I mean, Germany, also Poland, UK, I think also France. That would be probably the biggest countries. I mean, there is some immigration to US and Canada, but it's not as big. And Moldova is participating in Erasmus scheme. Since also before, since the association agreement with EU, Moldova got also more access to exchange opportunities. So it's now also available to universities here. And where do people in Europe, where do Moldovan people like to travel most? You know, there is like people actually, I think, do like to travel. But when last year, first we had like no flights during COVID times, and when the full-scale war started, also the sky was closed for half a year. So people couldn't travel so much as they liked. I also know from my family it was very, very difficult. So now a lot of people travel via, and also now one cannot travel from Ukraine, from the big airport. So we have to rely on the Chisinau airport, which is one here, and then Iași, which is the closest city in Romania at the border, or not at the border, but it's not far from Moldova. And I mean, people go a lot to the EU countries because one doesn't need a visa, and to the east, you know, there's not much far to go. And now there are also direct flights to Georgia, but this is only since last year, to Georgia and Armenia. To Turkey, people are also going, But I would say the first destination is really like EU, European Union. And then it depends where people find good connections and good flights. But I would say all over, like it's kind of like for holidays, people also go to Turkey, but also Italy, Spain. I mean, all Bulgaria, also in Romania. It also again depends on the income of people. And I mean, young people also travel quite a lot. As again, depends on possibilities, right? Like so now there are no low cost. Before there was a Wizz Air, but there are no low cost companies anymore flying from Chisinau. So I have to say it got a bit more complicated travel. So everyone is hoping that maybe there is an end, but doesn't sound so. So and I mean in the end, people then go to Romania and travel from Bucharest or from Iași.
Yeah, the other way around, which place and time would you recommend to visit Moldova?
I think like autumn and spring are the best. Summer is also nice, but it's very hot. In August, I was here for 1 month. It was 40 degrees all the time, between 30 and 40. But
nights,
yeah, it was terrible. But like now I came on Sunday and it was also 30 degrees. It's a bit too much. But now it's actually really nice at the moment. For instance, I think September, October, you really get the golden autumn and this Indian summer. It's about 22 degrees, so it's really nice time to visit the country.
Yeah, really cool. Yeah.
It's also very safe.
Everyone has still the opportunity to ask questions, so we'll just give you time. I think I lost connection there. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I don't see any questions popping up. So yeah, I think everything is done. Yeah, thank you much, Anastasia. It was a pleasure. I think we can wrap this up. A quick advertisement before everyone logs out. The next edition will be featuring someone from Poland, and we'll talk about Poland. And everyone is invited to visit us. Anastasia, do you too? Yeah, I wish you everyone a cool evening and hope to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.